Hi, I'm Jay Monte with a late summer edition of TruFan Boxing. I'm joined here with my colleague Sean Sullivan of Boxing Digest. Sean, we had a fight over the weekend. Chad Dawson fought James-Pascal in his hometown of Montreal, Quebec. Very bizarre ending, cut and technical decision rendered to Pascal. What's your feelings of the fight?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call it a bizarre ending. I mean, fights have ended by cut before. And it went to a technical decision in Pascal's favor because he banked enough rounds. And really, it was an interesting fight, competitive in certain spots. But for me, it was mostly frustrating watching Dawson, knowing or at least believing that he could have done a lot more than he did. I mean, if you watch the fight, he had Pascal hurt several times, and he was throwing combinations, and then he would just stop, let Pascal off the hook. And several times throughout the bout, one of the announcers, Emmanuel Stewart on HBO, continually commented that Pascal was tired from the 6th round on, and he was ready to be taken out. You know, whether that's the case or not, and he certainly was tired at moments. And Dawson, he did mention the HBO cameras heard him in between rounds and later in the fight that he hurt his shoulder. Of course, when Larry Merchant asked him after the fight, he denied it. So who knows if that's true. But it certainly seemed like he hurt his shoulder because he wasn't throwing punches as much as he should have been.
Well, interesting that Chad Dawson took a first loss. I never thought he would lose. He was that good a fighter coming up.
Yeah, he was listed in the pound for pound status. He was #1 at light heavyweight. Everyone wanted him to fight Bernard Hopkins, but that fight never came about, and now I doubt it will ever happen. Why should it happen now if he lost to Pascal? Right. The big fight now in that division involves Pascal fighting a guy moving up in weight, Lucian Bute, who missed out on the Super 6 tournament on Showtime on super middleweight. Put him up at light heavyweight. He's got the power to do it, I believe, and he can bulk up there. And you have a tremendous fight not only in the light heavyweight division, but in Canada. You got 2 Canadians. It would be tremendous up there.
Right. Talk about a guy that's moved up in weight to heavyweight. Tomasz Adamek fights this weekend against Michael Grant, a giant of a guy. I feel that Grant has experience and he could get a lucky punch in. How do you feel about this heavyweight matchup at Prudential Center?
Well, right. Just to go back a second. We just talked about Dawson. He has a win over Adamek, and looking back at how far Adamek has gone and how successful he's been, that win just looks that much better on Dawson's record. But Adamek fighting Michael Grant, a guy that fought for the heavyweight title back in 2000 and lost by a second-round knockout to Lennox Lewis. Sure, Grant might provide some stylistic problems for Adamek at first, and maybe he's got some power to hold him off for a little bit. But I just think that overall, Adamek is just going to keep moving forward, pressuring, and eventually he's going to wear Grant down for a late round stoppage.
What's going on with David Haye these days? Do you know?
Well, the talk is, he'll be fighting countryman Audley Harrison. Okay. Whether that fight comes off, I don't know. Haye tried to get the fight with the Klitschkos, or vice versa. The Klitschkos tried to get a fight with Haye. Regardless, it didn't happen several times. So they're talking about this all-British confrontation for the WBA title.
I want to talk a little bit about James Toney next week is the fight with Randy Couture. Bunch of heavyweights. He's coming out of the heavyweights because nobody wants to fight him. And just about 24 hours ago, Dan Goosen mentioned that after this fight, win, lose, or draw, he wants Randy to come into a boxing ring and box the same money, box James Toney. Your opinion?
Okay, well, that's never going to happen.
And why?
Because the UFC. The UFC has a strict contract on all their fighters, including Couture, that states they can only fight in the UFC and no other organization, whichever sport it is. So I doubt that Dana White would allow that to happen because he knows that James Toney would totally dominate Couture in a boxing ring. But that's why he's doing this fight in the octagon, because he knows or at least he's pretty sure that Couture is going to dominate 40-year-old or however old James Toney is. Toney. Interesting
enough, I've heard that Toney is taking this fight kind of very serious, simply because of the nature of the MMA, and he's down to like 220, 215.
Of course, I mean, he's got to take this fight seriously. Absolutely. I mean, otherwise he's going to get totally destroyed in less than a round. I mean, he's fighting in another man's sport against the guy that was the top of the sport for many years, Randy Couture. Randy Couture has a lot of facets to his game, striking, ground game, and all that. Toney has just been a puncher his whole life. So for him to learn the entire
playbook,
the whole entire playbook of mixed martial arts in a few weeks, it's just ridiculous, fighting a guy that's basically an expert. And you ask mixed martial arts fans, he might be a legend to them. Who knows?
Interesting. Moving up, moving out. We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. For Sean Sullivan of Boxing Digest, I'm Jay Monte, TruFan Boxing. Be there in the square. Take care.
Want more? Go to inasectv.com to connect with the world of sports. Real-time updates, blog postings, and all the action you can handle in a sec. inasectv.com, connecting you to the world of sports.